So we'd like to welcome Dr. Christie Sowby as our presenter today on Stunning Studio Spaces. And we'll just turn the time right over to you, Christie.
All right. Patrice, are you going to admit people or do you want me?
Yes, I've got them.
Okay. Well, welcome. And it's kind of smaller today. And so if you want to ask questions along the way, that's fine. We can make this presentation. We can focus on one area if you're really interested, or we can just fly through it and get through a lot of different aspects. But can everybody see my PowerPoint okay?
I can.
It's called Stunning Studio Spaces 101, Layout, Acoustics, and Organization. And there's a reason I'm sitting in front of my piano studio. I would never do this normally, but I thought it's good to just show you some ideas that I've thought about. And I just barely moved 4 months ago. So this is a brand new studio for me. I've had a lot of time to think about this. And I started thinking of this topic at the 2019 Spokane conference. For any of you there, I know Patrice was there. Anybody else?
Because you bounced ideas off me and I'm going, oh, that sounds cool.
Yeah, because while I was there, I was thinking about, well, what's missing from this conference? What hasn't been talked about? And what can be talked about in the future? And I realized that this topic wasn't really covered, especially acoustics. And organization is really popular right now. Think of Marie Kondo. And so I started studying this and I watched this Itzhak Perlman documentary. And in this documentary, it shows his living room, and he has this beautiful Steinway in it. And at one point in the documentary, Yevgeny Kissin is playing on Perlman's Steinway, and they're just hanging out together. And so once I got over the shock that Yevgeny Kissin can actually be in people's front rooms, because I just don't associate those two ever. He's just so incredible to me. I started looking at Perlman's area, his beautiful house. It has this bright yellow. It's not too bright though. It's very calming, and it has white molding. And I just felt really calm while the camera crew was in his house showing Itzhak Perlman. So it made me start to think, well, what do other incredible performers, where do they practice? Where do they teach? And so that's kind of where this stemmed from. And I have just learned so much from this topic. And something that I want you to understand is things that I present, you might think they are totally ugly. Part of this is interior design, and it's okay if you don't like some of this stuff. Everybody has their own taste. And I think that it gives you lots of power if you think, I want a room that is all red and put my piano in it because that makes me happy. That's something you've got to understand. So this isn't if you don't like what I like, then you must be wrong. These are just ideas for you to think about. Okay, so we're going to get started with layout. And I talked with my piano technician because I thought, who goes into the most piano studios or music studios? Piano technicians. And even though my piano technicians are male and they usually probably don't care a lot about design, they still know what studios look like. And so I asked them a whole bunch of questions. And so a lot of this is Keith Kopp's advice. He's the piano technician at BYU. And he said that he's seen studios that have one piano and they are very minimalistic. Like here, there's a lamp and a piano and a heater. And that's great. And he said good studios embrace multiple pianos if you are a piano teacher. And he's very adamant that you have a digital piano somewhere where students can warm up. And once again, he's going off of the studios that he's seen that functions the best. And he really believes, because he's been a piano teacher himself, that you should have an ability to have a notation program set up so your students can work on composition in studios. And based on the number of pianos that you have, it's going to change your layout. And by the way, can you see these pictures? Because I see people on the side of my screen, but you can't see that, right?
Right.
I just want to make sure you see all the pictures.
See it. Good.
Okay, because there are a lot of pictures. This is a very visual presentation. Anyway, so it's going to change your layout. And I've had some pretty funky layouts depending on where I've lived. And he says that side by side is really great. You can have some cool bathroom spaces for your students. in this house that I just barely built, I decided to make my bathroom a half bath instead of a full bath. My students do not need a shower by any means. And so I think it's good to have a bathroom for your students. They know to wash their hands and to clip their fingernails. I always keep fingernail clippers in a drawer in the bathroom because they cannot play unless their fingernails are very, very short. Drives me bonkers. And sometimes the layout of these rooms, they'll all be in one room. So like here you have the digital piano, you have the computer set up, you have the grand piano, and you have a piano rug, which is cool. So sometimes your spaces are all blended, and that's okay. You do what works for you. In Keith's experience, the pianos side by side are the best. And he's worked for a lot of different universities, and he says the university standard should be the standard for piano studios because they're trying to prepare you to be professional. And when he goes into universities, this is what he typically sees side by side. You can have it where the pianos are facing one another, and who wouldn't want to look at that amazing woman's face? Like, she just looks so happy, and I would love to stare at her all day. But I think there are some downsides to having the pianos facing. You can't see your fingers. Mostly for me, I would love to be able to see my students' hands and their hand position, but it does teach them to listen more, right? So you can think of the pros and cons of all of this. Here are some different layouts that I thought were interesting. They're not typical, but I don't know why, like this picture on the left, why the pianos are like that rather than like side by side, but they just wanted them scattered out. So those are some different layouts. And I think I already talked about this, side by side. You should shoot for it if you can. I want to talk about stages because this is like it's the biggest thing that has made a difference for me. The studio on the left is Heather Smith. If you've ever been to her house, this is her studio. And I got this idea from her and also another person's house that I went to growing up. But having this idea of being elevated makes a big difference in just the way your students' attitude is, and like you're stepping up to something, and it just seems more important. And you can see I built a stage 2, and I'll talk more about it when we get to acoustics, but my students act differently, and I can hold recitals here. I can fit 70 people in this room, and I have a whole bunch of chairs that I fit in that closet there. But I love that it's slightly elevated so you can see people as they're playing. Okay, I'm going to go to the next one. Okay, so we talk about stages, and then here are real stages. I just was blown away when I saw these. I don't know what type of people have these houses and can afford stuff like this, but I was pretty inspired by these. They are just gorgeous. And if you want to go big on stages, use this for your inspiration. The cool thing about stages is that, and this one, I do it all the time, is that you can move your pianos. I can move these pianos by myself. And I moved them around today for the presentation. I thought, okay, maybe I should angle them because it looks a little bit cooler when they're angled. And I can do that. Whereas if they're on carpet, you can't move them as easily. Like, you need to get some help. But I love, like, during ensemble season, I can have these pianos facing one another. So my students learn to listen more, and they learn to cue from their shoulders up rather than just paying attention side by side. So I know when they go into a competition or a festival for ensembles, they're prepared for whatever setup comes at them. And it was interesting this year because they went into a competition and the piano keyboards were actually at 90 degrees. And so, like, they were running into one another. It was a piano quartet. And I thought, okay, we haven't actually practiced that way because it was a kind of a small, weird space they were performing in, but we can replicate that here. And there was another piano festival they were in where the ends of the pianos were touching. And so it was kind of like a wide 120 degrees, but you can replicate that when you have pianos on wood stages. So there's some advantages with layout if you have pianos on wood stages. Lighting is important to talk about in terms of layout. I was just telling Patrice as we started, I've had eye issues. I had eye surgery yesterday. So I always need a lot of extra light. And I made sure that my studio has these big windows right here. I didn't want to have window wells when I built this house. I've been in studios where I've had window wells and it doesn't let in a ton of natural light. So I made sure to build this where there's like plants and pretty rocks that they can see, so I could get this natural sun, but without the sun actually hitting the pianos. There was a piano initially, a window initially behind the pianos in the layout we designed for the house. I said, nope, we can't do this window. And like the builders are like, but it's gonna look better. I said, nope, you can't do it with the pianos. It's just because it does affect the way the sun hits the pianos. And obviously, you don't want that. So in this, you can see that you can have an all dark room, or you can have sun coming in right on the piano, which I don't recommend either. Here, this can be an example of maybe too much sun coming in, even though I think they are really beautiful rooms and they're really open. It probably wreaks havoc on these pianos. You can also have, I think, err on the side of being too dark. When I look at this picture, it seems like that would be way too dark for me to play in. And it reminds me of a woman that I would go and visit several years ago, and she was severely depressed. And every time I'd go to her house, all the windows were closed, all the curtains were shut. And I'm like, well, no wonder. And I kept on trying to encourage her, like, open your windows, let some of the sun come in. And it really made a difference for me being at her house, not just her, but for other people, and how that mood, it can affect you based on your lighting or not in a house. This is another, oh man, color. Color is something you need to consider. And I kid you not, so this picture on the right, I couldn't believe that I found a picture like this. I went frequently to a woman's house probably a decade ago. And I'd perform, she was my neighbor, and I would perform at her house because she had a brown Steinway. In this picture, it's a black piano. But her house was, no kidding, full of Van Gogh yellow, Van Gogh green, and it looked like this picture. And when I'd go and perform, I kind of felt a little sick when I would play, just because the color had that much effect on me. And she was really into color theory, and these were her colors, the Van Gogh green and the Van Gogh yellow, and it made her happy. But other people like me, I was just kind of blown away and felt, ooh, and it really reminded me of this Van Gogh picture on the left, one of his most famous. So I have nothing against Van Gogh. I actually love Van Gogh. His biography, Vincent and Theo, is one of the best I've ever read, but I just don't know if I could thrive performing in an environment like that. So here are some different colors. You have kind of a brown on the left. White is really, really in. It comes off as very clean and pristine. I've been in piano studios where they are all red, and I just feel like I better sit up straight, because that is very intense when I go into studios like that. Have any of you had experiences like that, like different colors of studios?
Now that you're pointing it out, I think, man, I need to pay more attention. But I think that Van Gogh one would feel the same way. Just, oh.
Yeah, I was just surprised that it could have that type of effect on me. And then what I also found was that you can paint your pianos different colors, and that's really in with chalk paint. I have a piano that I've done similarly to this middle one. I got this really old piano from my grandma, but it was important to me. It was an heirloom and I wanted to keep it, but it was really beat up. So I decided to take the plunge, and I did the chalk paint in a really, what I think is beautiful. It makes me happy every single time I go by this piano. It's upstairs, otherwise I'd show you. It makes me really happy though to see it. And maybe some people would say, oh, I don't like that, that's not for me. But for me it was, and it was a really good choice. This middle one right here is in Joanna Gaines' house. So if you know Fixer Upper, I think that's cool that she's popularizing this idea of painting your pianos. And this one on the right is actually a Steinway. And Steinway will now allow you to pick a color if you want to color your piano. I think if maybe I had 20 Steinways, I might choose to paint one of them, but I'm still working on, I have one, and I'm not going to touch that thing with purple yet. So, your choice. Let's go to this acoustics portion. And I love, love, love acoustics. It makes a big difference. Makes all the difference, actually. This PowerPoint's being a little bit slow. Okay. I read about this experience from a contrabassist in the National Symphony Orchestra, and he was also an acoustics expert. So as typical symphonies, they go on tours, and he realized when the NSO went on tours, they would play in big rooms, medium rooms, and small rooms. And so it was the same conductor, it was the same orchestra, it was the same music, but they sounded dramatically different in these rooms. And he just said it even sounded at some points like they were two different orchestras. And the idea is that with acoustics, you change the room and you change the musical results. That's the number one thing that you can understand about acoustics. So if you don't like the way things sound, change the room and you will change the musical result. And so you got to be thinking about this. Lots of people want a concert instrument in their house. I'm debating right now. Like I bought this Steinway last year from a man named Russell Sorensen. He's a Utah Symphony guy. He is incredible with Steinways, but I bought this piano with the hopes of making it a 9-foot eventually. And I have thought, that the 7-foot sounds good in this room, but with acoustics, a 9-foot, and I'll get to this later, it might not sound as good. So you have to think about, if you want concert instruments, how's that going to sound? It changes the resonance. And so you've got to have proper planning if you want certain types of instruments in your house. Patrice, I just let someone in.
Oh, thank you.
That's fine.
She keeps coming and going, Carol. Hi.
That's funny.
I'm sure she's having trouble connecting.
That's fine. When it comes down to acoustics, it's part science, it's part empirical knowledge, it's part musical intuition, and part common sense. And I put these pictures up here because I think when people think of acoustics, they think of like ugly stuff on the wall and science. And a lot of it is, I want to tell you the story of a man that I took a class from, an acoustics class actually, at BYU, and he was in charge of the acoustics for the conference center in Temple Square. And that, like, what a feat to even just try and figure out that space where it has no pillars. They want everything really open. And he just talked to us about the challenges, because he was doing this. Well, he had done it a few years previous, before I got into BYU, but he talked about the challenges that he had run into, and the miking. And so I've been in there many times, and some places the sound is pretty good, and some places the sound isn't very good. So it just shows you there's a lot of thought that goes into this, a lot of money and planning, but still in the end, it kind of is what it is and what the performing group is. Luckily, you can talk to an acoustical engineer, and that's what this professor who did this conference center, he taught me that you can be a totally normal person and you can ask an acoustical engineer to come to your home, and they can kind of test the walls and the sound of your environment. So this is my brother-in-law, Craig, and he is an acoustical engineer. So I got to ask him a lot of questions about what makes a studio sound good. And I don't think I would be nearly as successful without him. So I really lucked out that way. But luckily for you, I'm sharing this stuff with you. Yes, people say, do I really have to have those ugly things on the wall? Do they make a difference? Yes. But notice in my studio, I do not have any of those ugly things on the wall. If I did, it will change the sound. And they have different purposes. The biggest thing though that I did, that Craig taught me, for stages, and this is the best thing, because I already told you wood stage is the best thing you can do, but you put underneath the stage what's called U-boats. And so a U-boat is this rubber black thing, and we ordered hundreds of them for the stage behind me, and we put them exactly like you see it underneath the wood. And we had to talk to our construction engineers, like how to build this, because they're not acoustic experts, but we showed them a picture. And when I talk about U-boats, by the way, I'm not talking about these ones, I'm talking about these ones. I had to throw a joke in there. But the U-boats work because the wood it's floating. It doesn't touch the ground beneath it, and it doesn't touch the walls to the side. So it stops the sound and it concentrates the sound. And I've played on stages where they do not have these U-boats, and it sounds almost scary, like you're playing on the top of a timpani head. It's just hollow, boom, boom, boom. The pedaling just, you can hear it so loudly, it's almost annoying. And so these U-boats make all the difference. And then after you put all the U-boats in, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but I put insulation between all of that, so it's insulated as well.
That didn't change. I would think that would deaden the sound.
It makes it more live. It makes it more live and more active because it's concentrated. Whereas before, if it goes through the floor and into the walls, it's really messy sounding. So that's why I love this idea of U-boats. Okay, so back to these wood stages acoustically. One of the pianos on my stage is a C7. And so it's almost 8 feet Yamaha. And I've had this piano for over 10 years at this point. And it's been in a lot of different places. It's been on carpet for many years. It's been on wood floors. It's been on acoustic stages. It's been on with those wood floors, with and without rugs, and it's been on cement. I've played it on all of those, and I know by far this piano sounds completely different on every single one of those environments. It sounds the best on a wood stage. And I didn't know how beautiful and bright, but also accurate this piano could sound once I moved it from the carpet to wood. It made all the difference. And I just thought, wow, I have a really good instrument on my hands, but I just didn't understand its potential until I moved it out of its environment. So if you want to experiment with that, you can. You can also do tile floors. This one on the left, hopefully you recognize that as Dane's Music, even those in St. George, like that's where we have our UMTA meetings. Tile's interesting because it's hard and it will reflect and it will make the sound brighter, but I don't like, because I thought about, well, should I do tile? Because Dane's Music has tile, but you can't move the pianos really well on tile because of the grout. And so you'll get chips. And I just thought I'm not going to, damage a really nice floor. And so I went with wood. The other thing that really convinced me, these are the 3 stages of Carnegie Hall, the middle being Weill Hall, which is where a lot of solo performances are. And that's actually what I designed this stage off of. There's a little arch in the middle and the pillars. I did my best. I don't have a really tall ceiling, but I was really inspired by this Weill Hall.
Wait, time out, Christie, is that where you performed? Which hall did you perform?
Yeah, in Weill Hall. But when I went there, I was like, this is really beautiful. And so when I built this house, I was like, let's try and make it like Carnegie Hall. Like, who does that? That would be kind of cool. So this was my feeble efforts to do this. You can't really see the arch because the pianos are in the way, but it was just really inspiring. And seeing these 3 stages, all wood, in one of the world's best venues, confirmed to me wood is really what makes a difference for these pianos. When it comes to lighting in concert halls, a lot of them have chandeliers. Think of a Bravenel Hall, but here you can see I have these can lights. And my brother-in-law actually told me this. In our previous house, we had can lights as well. He said, if you put can lights in, that is going to destroy your sound so fast because the sound is going to go through these lights and it's going to go to the upper floor. And that was because we had trusses. In between each floor of your house, you have what's called trusses. And our trusses, they were just they were 1 feet, which is 1 foot. And that's pretty typical. And so those can lights, they go quite into the ceiling. And I think he was right. We lost some sound potential, but in this house, we made triple trusses. There's several feet between the floors in this house because we really care that much about the sound. We didn't want anything to be heard between the floors. And we wanted to have can lights because we didn't want things hanging down. We want to give as much space as we can in a basement that's within reason. And so that has made a difference, making really, really wide trusses and still being able to have these can lights in here.
Okay, Christie, so what kind of lights do you have there?
These are can lights, so they go into the ceiling. But what I was saying is that they make a difference because the trusses are so wide, so big in this house, as opposed to this much. It's 3 times the space. It doesn't make harm the sound. It doesn't go into the other floors of the house like my previous house did.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, so I have a 4.5-year-old. She does run around when she can. She's severely disabled, but at our previous house, when she would run around because of those trusses, it was just like this T-Rex, boom, 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 you know, and if you want to like maintain this professional image and you have this T-Rex going on above you, it can be kind of unnerving. And so we made sure when we built this house for her specifically and her needs, but she is 2 floors above me. And so she can run around like that T-Rex and she can scream and do whatever. And it's great. I can't hear her at all. And it's wonderful. So I can like teach and she can be her person and it's lovely. But just be kind of aware of like what, you know, why can you hear certain sounds, and just being aware of like, will that distract your students if they're hearing things that maybe you don't want to either. If you have an acoustical engineer come to your house, I mean, it doesn't have to be expensive, but sometimes they'll tell you, and Keith has told me this, my technician, that sometimes the best place for your piano is in the very center of the room. My living room does not look like this. It is not that like big and ginormous, but I think that's cool if you can put your piano in the middle of the room and make it work. Think about like where to place the piano. That has to do with the idea of maybe it's in the center of the room and it might not be where you want it to be, but like walk around your room, your house, and clap. This is what performers do when they get ready to perform on stage. They try to find the sweet spot. They whistle, they talk. And so it doesn't matter what instrument you're playing, whether it's piano or an oboe. This is what people do to check out the acoustics in a live hall like Carnegie Hall, or you can do it in this area. And you know, maybe I need to check out more with these pianos behind me. Maybe they need to be closer to one wall or the other one, and that will create a better sound. And that's how you check that out, where to place the piano. Having lids opening into a big space is always, always better than having them face the walls like this one. It's because it has to do with wavelengths and reverberations just bouncing off of the wall. So if you have the opportunity to have them open into a larger space, you will get a better sound that way.
I just had to look, you can't see mine, the clear right in the back there
Yeah.
is my grand piano. And since we're going to be doing our recital in a week, I opened the lid, but the lid faces the window. But that's probably a good thing because I don't have a big house and I have so much sound in my house right now. Like, oh, I need a bigger house. But listen,
yeah, and that's what I mean. Like I present these ideas and you just do what you need to do. But just know, like Patrice, that it will sound better if it's open into the room rather than against the window. That's what acoustic studies tell us. Just because the waves hit the wall sooner than they would going into an open room. And then uprights, that's a lot of us probably have uprights. I have uprights and I've had this upright right here on a stage open and it sounded terrible when you don't have something behind it. It's just way too washy, way too open. You need to have it against a wall or a piece of furniture. This causes problems like if you're a ballet pianist and, you know, or think of like church primary pianists, like that piano is open a lot of times toward these kids that are singing. And in order to help this sound be better, just put like a cloth, a tablecloth, a piece of fabric on the backside, and it will help it not be so wah, 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 you know, washy and too big sounding, I think, for that space. You can also put rugs underneath it, and that will help dampen the sound. Okay, size of the instrument makes a big difference. And like I said, I'm in this battle right now where I don't know if a 9-foot concert instrument, that sounds really, really cool. And that's what you play on when you go to big concert halls. And so it's cool to actually have one in your front room like this. But is that really the best acoustic wise? And I need to look at these comments real quick because here we go. Sometimes low frequencies have the longest wavelengths and cause most problems in smaller rooms because of wavelength. The length of the wave exceeds the largest dimension of the room. In other words, the lowest A on a piano has a frequency, this is as most sciencey as I'll get on you, it's 27.5 hertz. And that means in order for that wavelength to sound its best, it needs to have 41 feet to really sound its best. This room, you can tell, is not 41 feet. And so I'm very curious about how that sounds in that room. And so if you take a smaller instrument, like a 7-foot, it's going to sound better, even though the sonic capabilities of a 9-foot grand has the potential to sound better, it's not going to sound better no matter what you do. And that's the case with most instruments where, like, think of low instruments, tubas, contrabassoons, organs, pianos. You can feel the vibrations up close, but until you're at least 3 to 5 feet away, you can't decipher the pitch of that. So that's what happens on grand pianos if they're too big in a room. You have a hard time deciphering the pitch. I think that's really interesting. Many times when you go into concert halls, you see weird designs and they can get pretty creative with this. On the left is the Gardner Hall at the U of U. And I've been in there plenty of times to know, I didn't know this until I was a student there, that the walls move in there. They can go in, they can go up, and they can go down. And it changes depending on what type of ensemble. If it's a solo piano versus a choir versus an orchestra, it changes. So someone really put in that thought. And I think that is just so neat. And so if you feel like your studio is too bright, then put things on your walls, add furniture, add curtains. And so that picture of Carnegie Hall, Weill Hall, they have these blue curtains, and that's to dampen the sound a little bit. If you want to brighten your room, then take out the curtains, take out the carpet, take out the chairs that have lots of material on it, and it will help brighten the sound. Okay, so with this one, my technician taught me about this, where this is when my piano was on carpet. And I swear I was just hearing like rings and dings as I was playing this Yamaha piano. And he said, Christie, it's not the piano, it's this cabinet all the way across the room that's 15 feet away. What? And so sometimes things that actually sound like they're in your piano, because of the acoustics and wavelengths, it's actually making something else that is just the right size vibrate in a certain way. And so check that out and consider that if you hear weird things in what you think is inside your piano or your instrument. You want to try and avoid square rooms. This is an exactly 1-to-1 ratio, just because it basically makes your piano, I won't go into the acoustics, like the science of it, but it makes your piano sound uneven. And so it might not be that your piano could be perfectly regulated and you have a great technician, but there's going to be certain notes that pop out over others. So if you have some notes on your piano that are really, really bright, think of the room. It might not just be your technician that, if they've been working on certain notes. Keeping your instruments in tune is very important. I've noticed after ensemble season, when they're just, really playing the piano, there's lots of sound coming, the pianos are getting a good workout. The instruments are actually louder, and that's because the dissonances in the air, they're hitting the wavelengths more. And my pianos always sound quieter right after they're tuned, because it's just like more peace. And I found that I was surprised when the pianos always sound lighter, quieter after they're tuned. Everybody has an opinion about a humidifier. People are yes or no in Utah. And I think that if you're interested in a humidifier system and you find that it keeps your piano more consistently in tune, then it's worth it. But I have next door neighbors that are like, yes, and the other one's like, no. And it just depends on your preference. But if you have a room, like I don't think you deal with this in St. George, where it's too humid, then you could add plants and it soaks up that humidity. So Patrice, when you go to Texas, maybe you'll have a little bit more humidity that you're dealing with, right? So that's how you can kind of overcome that. So that's, we talked about pianos next to windows. Oh, pianos next to walls. This is interesting. I don't think I've ever done this, but you want to keep pianos away from outside walls if you can help it. And so when I said that they wanted to build a window right here on the stage, I said, no way, because I didn't want that cold or hot air, depending on what season it is. So you want to feel your walls, like feel how they feel today. And that's going to make a difference on your piano. You want to keep them on inner walls. And so for the studio, I insulated every single ceiling, floor, and wall in here because I wanted it to be really consistent. So I save money that way, actually, if you insulate, because I'm not having to tune the pianos as much. They stay consistent. Vents, if you can help it, try not to have vents go around your piano. You can, I don't know if you can see it. I fought with the HVAC person when they were putting it in. I said, I do not want anything blowing on this stage. And they said, you've got to, like it, they explained like how the house works. And I said, well, that's like, they ended up winning and they had to put it on the stage, but you just keep it closed because it will make your pianos go out of tune if you're constantly blowing air on it. So turn that one off if you can. It will save you.
You were a problem builder, weren't you, Christie?
No, I wasn't. They knew that the stage was very important to me. And they're like, who is this like piano woman? She just wants this to be like work out. And that's because in my previous house, I ran into these problems. And so that's why I liked having this opportunity to have a second build, to like kind of get that second opportunity to figure out the T-Rex above me, the floor to make it sound a little bit better, the vents going straight on the pianos. And so there's always repentance. I felt like this was a great opportunity.
Second chances. That was great.
Yeah. So I guess to sum up, acoustics is just avoid corners. The 10 length rule is that in theory, you should have 10 times the feet away from the piano, like the amount of feet. So you don't want to have like a piano, like a practice room, in other words. It's just not going to sound good. Practicing in practice rooms are the worst. The pianos never sound good in there and it hurts your ears. You want to be strategic about where you place your pianos and what you place underneath it. Like putting carpets really make a difference. For me, I haven't yet because I like the sound right now. And if I want to change it, I can. I didn't know this, but you can actually audition a piano in your home before purchasing. So if I'm looking at this 9-foot piano, I'm going to tell Russell, well, let's bring it here and let's see how it sounds on the stage before I actually put in this money to buying it. I love that. And piano dealers, they will basically do anything to sell you a piano. So don't be afraid to ask them to do that.
I didn't know they would do that. That's good.
Yeah. So you can be a crazy demanding piano lady and say, nope, I want it here first to test it out. And of course, using an acoustical professional. And if you have a room that has a sloped ceiling like this, that's the correct way the piano needs to be. It needs to be sloped away from the slope. Okay, this is where I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but you need to be careful about what you put on pianos. I have seen pianos like this. These are not my own photos, but I just feel like when the lid of a piano is closed, it's like wearing a mask on your face all the time. Oh wait, we know about that, right? The past 2 years. And that's my opinion, but I'll let you just take it or leave it. It is kind of fun to look at, but I also do not think instruments are furniture. They are instruments. Okay, I'm going to move on before I get into trouble. But overall, like acoustics, lots of times when I thought of acoustics, I see videos of people recording in acoustical spaces. They look like this. There's carpets on the wall for a reason. There's curtains. And maybe you don't have to have a space like this, but the point of acoustics is to let your ear be the judge and to at least just start thinking about these things and maybe why they're happening. Okay, so anything about acoustics that you want to talk about?
Well, you're going to have to appease Rod when I say, oh, we need to switch the piano around. But it'll be worth a try.
It's worth, maybe you'll be surprised, Patrice. That's curious. It doesn't hurt.
I'm going to have to get some boys over here to help us move it. But
you don't have to, but I just think it would surprise.
I want to try.
I think it'd surprise you. So the last area, and we have about less than 10 minutes, is organization. This is a very popular topic right now. I like to be organized. It helps me thrive. It helps me stay on top of stuff. Lots of people, they're going digital. Some people I know, like they go all in and they just digitize everything, and more power to them. That is amazing. And I had this big CD collection. So let's talk about CDs. No, actually, let's talk about books first, because we all have piano books. You go to the MTNA conferences, you come back with this many piano books each year. And, what do you do with them? And I thought, well, how do libraries, how do they do it? And if you look at this picture, the bottom shelves and the top shelves in all libraries that I've been to, university libraries, they're always kept open. And they never stuff the shelves all the way. They make sure that there's space, at least in the libraries I've been to, you can see in some of these, there's space that's left. They don't try to stuff it. And so that's kind of it's a very good idea. These, on the other hand, they're very, very stuffed, especially this middle one. That's a good use of space, but that's pretty tight. Marie Kondo, and I like this idea. I'm not like her worshiper or anything, but I like some of these ideas where she says things, especially if they're inanimate, really need to have breathing space, because it changes how you feel. My closet does not look like this. It's a little bit more crunched together, but I have thought a lot about that. Like, what can I do to help this space breathe better? And honestly, it changes the way I feel when I think about things and breathing. A lot of piano studios I've been to, they have these types of setups where the books are disheveled, they're kind of leaning. It's hard because piano books, they're really thin and you have thousands of them, right? And I just thought, oh, how do we get over, all these books going every way? Because when I get these interior design books, I studied interior design for a long time, everything is just, upright and perfect. And I don't know how realistic that is. And they only have 4 books, right? Instead of thousands. So I studied Marie Kondo, this idea, and I started thinking, well, how do music stores organize their books? And so you can have bins in your house if you want. I usually get paper cuts when I go through the bins because I'm going through them so quickly. You can have shelves in the background of this right picture, but that's not really, doesn't use your space very effectively. But I like this idea of being able to go to a book and just taking it off because you see it and you're inspired by it. You can also use music cabinets. I've seen people with these. I like these that the drawers are smaller. So you don't have a drawer that's this deep. That's not effective when you have a ton of sheet music. You're just not going to get to it. So I like that those are thinner, and they do exist. They're called music storage cabinets. I'm not a huge fan of these metal cabinets. I have had metal cabinets before, but I just hide them because I don't even want to look at them. You have to go into a closet or something. But you can find pretty wooden ones or some colorful ones. Let's see. There's also, Patrice, I think I probably got this idea maybe from you when you did that studio. You went to different studios, yeah. And was it Rebecca's?
Becca Udy had
these. Yeah. And so she's totally inspired me, and I'm like, okay, this is cool because you can still have room when you have these book holders, but you've got to find the right size. And so that has been my just absolute nemesis for 18 months as I knew I was moving to this next house. And I'm like, okay, I'm finally going to do these magazine holders for these books. And I've been through different types and I found the right ones. They're from IKEA and they're called Kvissel, but they're metal.
Say that again, what are they called?
Sturdy, Kvissel, Kvissel, and there's an IKEA in Las Vegas, and so you can go and get, I don't know, they'll ship to you.
Because I have the I have the paper cardboard ones, and they are slow. I mean, I've had them for several years now, but I think your IKEA ones would be better.
They are so strong, and so that's why I actually have 2 cameras, because I'm hoping I can show you at the very end. Just because I've been through so many, and these ones, it wasn't my idea. I actually got it from another teacher. I said, what magazine holders are those? And she said, IKEA Kvissel. I think these are really pretty. I like the kind of gold coppery look. And so you can choose to have these magazine holders facing outward, but if they're facing inward like this, then you need to have them labeled, unless you know how to organize extensively in your mind and remember where everything is. I've used these things on the right where they try to prop up music. They are terrible. I was just constantly fighting them. So I do not recommend that. You can get, I've never seen this, a magazine holder where it has different slots. I thought that was maybe better than the stuff on the right. You need to be able, I like this, that it's just labeled. I have thoughts about, about organizing. Like some people can be really OCD about, these are batteries, and I think it comes down to how often you use something. So I use my piano books all the time. I teach a lot of online lessons. And so I physically have a copy of everything that my students do, because I have tried the online thing where they send me copies of everything. But then you just spend the majority of the lesson. What email is this in? How is this organized? When did you send it? Can you send it again? And I just hate wasting lesson time like that. So I just have physical copies of everything. And because I have these physical copies, I use them a lot. And I just need to I have a system where if I can't find it within like a couple of seconds, then I haven't organized it well. And so like with these batteries, for example, you can find these batteries within a couple of seconds, but I also have a battery box and I know where to go. They are not organized as impeccably and stacked like this, but they're in different compartments, like in sacks. And so I can find them really quickly. And that's the point, is if you can find something quickly, then it's fine. It doesn't matter how it's organized. I think they're kind of cool. Batteries. CD.
It scares me.
Oh yeah. Well, I wanted a picture that would scare you. And these are records on the side. And I remember going to piano teachers' lessons at college, and seriously, their CD towers are like cockeyed, and I would be scared for my life, like walking by this tower, because it's just, they're out of control. So I did take the plunge and I digitized everything probably 5 years ago. And I have to tell you, honestly, I do not miss the CDs at all. It just makes my life really easier. I'm not ready to do that with music though, like with actual sheet music. So you have to know what you're like, and just think about, students, if they're walking into what looks like Beethoven's house on this left, I don't know how inspired they're going to be to just try and get around that mess. It makes me physically sick to look at that picture. Woof.
All three of them make me want to go home.
Yeah, they had a bad day. So, in terms of having your own entrance, this is important in terms of organization. Every single pedagogy book I've read really emphasizes that if you can, have a designated studio entrance, and you can charge more for that because you have to pay more for a separate studio entrance. And that's what's different between my old houses and this one. I have a separate studio entrance. I had to pay money to get my cement stairs coming down to the studio heated. So, because I didn't want to be out there scraping the snow. I wish we'd have more snow. But I was like thinking through this, what can I do to make this process easier for students, for parents coming down, and myself? And so I decided to have this basement in the studio, and it's a designated entrance. And so I can charge more because of that. And it's just important that it doesn't double as a living space if you can help it. And I haven't always been able to help it, and that's fine. Consider smell. I've been in houses where it's just way, way, way too strong. I'm really sensitive to smell, and I think it's because I'm blind in one eye. And so like my other senses are heightened, especially I've always had an impeccable sense of smell. Sometimes it's a bad thing. And so I'm just like really sensitive to smells, and, maybe ask people, how does my house smell? If you don't know. Think about pets. And I am not anti-pet, like at all, but I don't have pets. But I have been to places where like I took bagpipe lessons for a while, and my bagpipe teacher had this huge Scottish dog, and it made me want to vomit, like just how it smelled, because it was never washed. And, I've also been to professors' houses where they have cats and dogs, and they come and they attack you, or Dobermans. I've been attacked by a pit bull before. And so some dogs are they're a little bit intimidating, and they're like, no, just let them lick you. And I'm like, no, I really don't want to be licked. So like, just be considerate of other people. If you have pets, and if your pets sit on piano benches like this, clean the piano benches. Just things to think about. I've got to end, but this is a toolbox that I use. This is actually my toolbox, and it helps me organize, just like little office supplies. You can do things with wires and make them a lot more, it's not an eyesore. You can label them. And the last thing, cleanliness is next to godliness. I heard that growing up, believe it if you want to. And that's just some ideas on layout and organization and acoustics. So if you have any questions,
Do you hire it out,
ask
Christie?
now.
Will you come down to my house and fix me up?
Do I?
Are we glitching?
Oh my gosh. No, like you would need to hire an interior designer, but like I think you could talk to, I don't know. The answer is no, I don't hire myself out because I'm not qualified, but I'm interested in these things. And from what I've studied, I've been able to change things myself, and I know they make a difference. So your knowledge is about the same as mine at this point.
Oh no, but you are an incredible resource. I don't know about Nancy or Caroline or Sandra, but I just feel highly motivated, even though, I can't put a wood floor in, but I understand a little bit more about some of the sounds,
Right.
and that there are some things I can do. I can flip that piano around and see if I like it better. I might not. I might flip it back around. But at
Right.
least the idea is there to say, try it and see.
Well, and I was just thinking, if you go into a music store, like sometimes if you have recitals and there's this piano in the center of the room, because I know lots of teachers, they go to a community center for a piano recital. You can move that piano around if it's on wheels, and just think about where the sound is. It doesn't have to be your own front room. It can just be a performing space where you're at. And now you're a little bit more empowered of, okay, well, I should clap, I should whistle, I should think about where the piano lid is going, etc.
So just for a funny, to defend all the professor's book stacks. So Vedrina Subotic the other day posted an article about creativity, and they went into like different people's like spaces and things. And the majority of like artists and creative people had messy homes, and they had stacks of things, versus those who were not creative and had these pristine homes and things. So it's okay if we have a few stacks of things.
I am not, hopefully I didn't come off that way. I'm not.
No.
I have like little spaces too, but I just think overall there's a balance.
Oh yeah. And I just thought it's funny because Vedrina's house is like an older home, and she has students in there all the time, and it's the like quintessential piano professor's home, with the Asian carpet underneath the grand piano and everything.
My teachers, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, my studio's in my front room, but it's really not my living space. It's really just my studio. But I have such a hard time deciding whether I want my space to look like a living room and look beautiful and interior decorated, or if I want it to look like a classroom. And that's my big struggle. I just can't decide. So I have some of both.
You do you. And that's what I love. Like, there's not one way. Everybody is different. I knew that for me to thrive, I wanted a recital space that was the same as a teaching space. And so I was like, I still have yet to put things on the wall, but it's very much this is a piano room only. My daughter doesn't come down here because she has different issues. Like, it's not like she's not allowed. She just can't, she'll run into things. But it's like I keep it just as a piano room, and I like that idea. But I've had spaces where people are walking through the front door, and it's it is what it is. You just make it work.
And you just sometimes have to be grateful that you have a piano and you have the ability to teach, and you do the best. And so now I'm going to go get motivated to clean up my closet. I'm going to give it some breathing room.
Yeah, and I think ultimately it comes down to, it's not, these things are nice, but isn't it most important that you're making relationships with your students and the quality of your teaching over, these things do have an impact on your teaching, and students do act differently where they're at, but it's about those relationships that you make with your students that counts.
Well, and I love this because it gives us some ideas. If you don't have the ideas, then you're just the same.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Do you want me to show you the cavissels as we end?
Yes.
I have my iPad here, and I can like flip it around, I think. Let's see. I was hoping this would be easier. If I can't figure it out in the next like 2 seconds.
I bet you can.
I don't know how to make it so it's visible. Maybe I can just take my computer. My screen. Okay. Nope. Okay, I'll take my computer, even though I really didn't want to have to do this. Now, I
We get to
I
go
don't
for
want
a
to make
little
you all
walk.
sick. Like, don't you have those students where like they shake the camera so much and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. So I don't even know what you're seeing, but these are the cavissels where they're just super sturdy and I can pull them out and they're organized.
So they're hard plastic, right?
They're hard metal, but they're white and they're clean and there's nice
Oh.
leaves. I don't even know what you can see.
Yeah, we're seeing it.
Anyway, we will end like now as I'm standing in my piano office.
Okay, thank you very much, Christy. Thank you, everyone. This has been great. Yeah.
Thank you. Have a wonderful
Yeah.
day. Thanks for letting me present.
Okay.
Thank you,
bye.
Christy.